Okay, Module 54 is where we are going to talk about prejudice and discrimination. And the two questions we are going to answer in this module is one, how do stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination differ from each other? And the second question is how can we reduce prejudice and discrimination? So let's start off just by giving a basic definition for all three of these. A definition for stereotype, a definition for prejudice, and a definition for discrimination. So first off, stereotype. This is a set of generalized beliefs and expectations about a specific group and its members. A set of generalized beliefs and expectations about a specific group and its members. So you're saying that everyone who's part of this group behaves the same way, thinks the same way, has the same ideas and beliefs. That's based on a stereotype. Now, prejudice is a negative or sometimes a positive evaluation of a group and its members. Discrimination is the behavior that's directed towards the individual on the basis of their membership in a certain group. So prejudice is the thought, discrimination is the action, okay? Prejudice relates to attitude, so it is a thought. Discrimination relates to behavior or an action. So you can have prejudice without discrimination. You can have prejudicial thoughts without acting out on them. However, if you're discriminating, you are already prejudiced. So you can have prejudice without discrimination, but you cannot have discrimination without prejudice. Okay? Prejudice is the thought, discrimination is the action. And it's usually based on stereotypes. That's usually where this comes from. So, acting on stereotypes leads to discrimination. Acting on stereotypes leads to discrimination. When you are discriminating, that can lead sometimes to an exclusion from jobs, from neighborhoods, to educational opportunities, and it can sometimes result in lower salaries and benefits. You can have racial discrimination. You can have discrimination based on age. You can have discrimination based on sex. You can have discrimination based on religion. You can have discrimination based on political affiliation, right? That's what we're saying. It can lead to exclusion from jobs, neighborhoods, educational opportunities, and it can sometimes result in lower salaries and benefits. But it's not always negative per se. Sometimes that discrimination can also result in a more favorable treatment to a favored group. When you stereotype someone, so stereotyping can also cause members of stereotyped groups to behave in ways that reflect that stereotype. So you may not have originally felt that way, but because you're part of that group, you're going to start acting that way. You're going to follow along with the stereotype. That is what is expected of you. So you almost have what is called a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay? You have this self-fulfilling prophecy. The expectations about the occurrence of a future event or behavior that act to increase the likelihood the event or behavior will occur. So you have this expectation about what's going to occur, and it actually increases the likelihood of that actually occurring then. It is this self-fulfilling prophecy. It's what's expected, so it actually happens. All right, I want to go back and I want to talk about prejudice. So the foundations of prejudice. Where do we get prejudice from, right? Where do we get these prejudicial thoughts from? So we go back and we think about observational learning. We talked about this at the end of the learning chapter back in maybe chapter 8. I can't remember which chapter that was, but we talked about observational learning. So when we think about observational learning with prejudices, the observational learning approaches to stereotyping and prejudice suggest that feelings about members of various groups are shaped by 4 different things. Okay, observational learning approaches to stereotyping and prejudice suggest that feelings about members of various groups are shaped by 4 different things. One is the behavior of parents, other adults, and peers. That can shape our prejudicial thoughts. The behavior of parents, other adults, and peers. We observe someone else doing it or saying it, and then we have the same thoughts. We may not act on them, but we have the prejudicial thoughts. Another thing that is how we learn these prejudices, imitating the behavior of adult models. That's part of that observational learning approach. You see someone else discriminate, and then you yourself discriminate. Sometimes even subtle or ambiguous forms of discrimination occur, and that's what we follow. And then, not too surprising, mass media also plays a role. Social media is huge in our society. And so that is definitely playing a role in this observational learning that we have. Let's continue on with the foundations of prejudice. So being a member of a specific group helps to magnify your sense of self-esteem. Being a member of a certain group seems to magnify your sense of self-esteem. You feel even more of that self-esteem because you are part of this group. Social identity theory suggests that people use group membership as a source of pride and self-worth, and they tend to be ethnocentric about it. They use part of that group to make them feel more proud of themselves. Whenever we talk about ethnocentrism, it refers to viewing the world from your own perspective and judging others in terms of their group membership. And what happens that now we have, your own perspective and you judge others from their groups. Now we have what are called in-groups and out-groups. So we come to think that our own group, which is the in-group, is better than groups for which we don't belong. And that's the out-group. And that's how a lot of this starts. You think that your group is the best because that's a part of your group. And anyone who's not your group is part of the out group, and they're not as good. More recently, when we have started looking into prejudice, we've gone into the area of neuroscience, specifically this area called social neuroscience. and it's a subfield of social psychology. So with neuroscience, you're looking at the brain and various structures of the brain that play a role specifically in prejudice. So social neuroscience seeks to identify the neural basis for social behavior. Social neuroscience seeks to identify the neural basis of social behavior. And what we have found is that researchers are examining specifically that part of the brain known as the amygdala. The amygdala is the emotional center of your brain, the emotional structure. So researchers examined activation of the amygdala to exemplify the value of social neuroscience approaches. And so the amygdala is very highly responsive to anything that is threatening or unusual or highly arousing.